welcome all of you. We are all actors on this stage despite the theater that we are not playing. It is real and we need real action. Our mission and our message stay the same. To take action to meet this moment, we need structure, organization, and power. I will yield to the three women building the structure, providing the organization, and wielding the power. CEO Zachrin, Councilor Goldenberg, and Senator Creem. Our CEO will set the context, provide housekeeping, state the moment, and guide us through the remainder of our time. Ruth?
Well, that was quite the opening. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you. And for those who are here who do not know me, my name is Ruth Zachrin, and I am always very proud to say that I am the CEO of the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence. And somehow the time has been going by, and in 2 short months, I will have been with the coalition for 6 years. And it has been quite the journey. Some of you have been with us right from the beginning, including some of you who have been with us since longer than that, since before I was around. And some of you are new friends, and I welcome all of you to our quarterly meeting this evening. And as much as there is so much going on in the world, it always really fills my heart to be with our coalition community. So I'm just really glad to see all these faces on my screen. And we have a charge tonight. We really wanted to bring everyone into conversation about how the coalition is meeting the moment with all of the things that are coming at us and how we are moving the work forward. So I want to set the stage for what we'll be doing together over the next hour, give you a little bit more information about what you can expect and share some of the things that I have been up to. But over the course of the next hour, you're going to hear about different pieces of the work that we have been engaged in from members of our team, leaders, and staff members, so you can better understand what we have been up to during this very hectic time. In a little while, we'll also be joined by Senator Cindy Creem, who will be sharing a bunch of the work that she has been doing both in the State House and in general to move the work forward. We're very excited to be welcoming her later. She's been a true champion for our work and a champion for the work of gun violence prevention. And after she speaks, we'll have some time for questions and answers. So I just wanted to let folks know that as you have questions throughout our evening, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll have some time to get to all of them after that piece of the program. And then we're going to finish with some announcements so that you know what's coming up in the future for the coalition. We will be sharing some documents and some links this evening as well. And if you don't get all of them, do not worry. We will send out a follow-up email tomorrow or Friday with all of this information as well as all of the links. So you can look forward to receiving that too. And before we get to having some other members of the team share pieces of the work, I just wanted to share a little bit with all of you about what I have been up to, again, to really meet this difficult moment. A lot has happened over the past couple of months. A lot has happened over the past 6 or 7 months. We celebrated when we got this bill passed last July. We had a couple of weeks of celebration, and then we found out a whole other piece of work was coming at us with this ballot initiative, and we've been very busy with that. And of course, since November, there's been a lot more work to do to really beat the moment. And some of the things that I have been doing is really trying to understand what's happening on the federal level with all of the things, policy and everything else, but also what's going on with federal dollars so that we can disseminate that information to our member organizations and folks here in Massachusetts. Another initiative that I have been a part of is there's a newer group meeting nationally that's bringing together folks who are building coalition around community violence intervention. And the idea of this group is to really knit together what these efforts looks like across the country and build power, particularly now as we worry about the impact of both policy changes and decreased funding on the community violence intervention ecosystem. And this group has actually been putting together policy and funding recommendations to bring to state leaders so that as things happen on a federal level, states are well positioned to continue to support community violence intervention and make sure that work continues to move forward. Another thing that I have been up to is really staying in contact with the leaders of other state organizations so that we can be supporting each other, hearing about what's happening in other places, and making sure that we are working in coalition together as we really try to navigate this ever changing landscape that we are dealing with. And also paying attention to the opportunities for us to be involved in federal actions, sign on to things when we can, and make sure we're adding our voice here in Massachusetts to things that are happening on a national level. And one such example of that was just recently we signed on to an effort to really hold the administration accountable to the promise that they made to the government of Mexico to address the trafficking of guns into Mexico and to make sure that that promise to address the trafficking is attended to. And that was something that we really wanted to sign on to, particularly because we know that so many of the guns that are going into other countries are coming from the United States, and some of them are coming from right here in Massachusetts. So we continue to pay attention to those efforts to make sure that Massachusetts is represented on the federal level. And another big part of the work over the past several months, has been really building the foundation to make sure that we are ready to take on all of the things that are coming in our direction. And we have gotten a lot done over the past few months that we are looking forward to sharing with you tonight. And I have not been doing that work alone. That has been with staff and with our leaders, including one leader that many of you know quite well, Janet Goldenberg, who has been super involved in helping us build that foundation and make sure that we are ready to take on that work. And so this gives me the opportunity to introduce my friend and my colleague and one of our leaders, Janet Goldenberg, who's going to tell you about some of the exciting things that we have been up to. Janet?
Thanks, Ruth. God, I can't believe it's been 6 years. That's just, I'm not going to have to take some time to process that. Thank you, Mark, for the kind introduction. As Mark said, I am Attorney Goldenberg, and although I haven't practiced in quite some time, when I did practice, I was a litigator, and I did not shy away from a good fight, and that's where we are today. So some of you probably already know that back in August of 2024, the coalition was instrumental in helping to get passed a key piece of gun safety legislation that, among other things, regulates dangerous ghost guns, provides for data collection to track crime guns, expands ERPO, and does some other really important things that keep Massachusetts safe. As our Boston mayor said before Congress, you want to have safety, pass sensible gun regulation. And that's what Massachusetts did. And within a few months of us passing that important law, the Gun Owners Action League, which is the Massachusetts affiliate of the NRA, collected signatures to put on the ballot in November 2026, a question that if it goes their way, it will overturn that gun law and erase all of that hard work that so many of us did. You're going to hear from Senator Cindy Creem shortly, and she was instrumental in making sure that this bill happened. And it would be really devastating for the citizens of Massachusetts if this law were to fall. And we are quite determined to make sure that that does not happen. So because of the way laws are, the Mass Coalition is not going to be the entity that opposes what Goal is doing. It's a ballot campaign, and that means there needs to be a whole different infrastructure.
You guys, I just said we're on the Zoom. Look at the screen.
So we have created an entity called Mass Action to Prevent Gun Violence. Some of you have probably heard about this. It is going to be an advocacy organization. It's going to be sort of, think of it as an advocacy arm of the Mass Coalition. We are affiliated, although we're a separate organization. We are going to provide additional capacity for all of the advocacy work that we know is coming this way. both for the ballot initiative and also to continue working within the Massachusetts State House or municipal advocacy or federal advocacy, sort of the advocacy arm of the coalition or extension of the advocacy work of the coalition is going to live in Mass Action. But one of the first pieces of work that Mass Action wanted to get started was making sure that Massachusetts was positioned to defend this gun law. And so we have entered into a contract with a consultant, Field First. Some of you might have had interaction with Field First. Carl Nilsson, their CEO, their founder, is well known, is involved in a lot of really good work. I think he's the definition of making good trouble. And so we are proud to be partnering with Field First to help guide us in this work as both campaign consultant and campaign manager. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about that work as we're going forward. We will continue, there will be work to set up a ballot campaign, then there will be a field operation, there will be a lot going on. And I want to just do a little shout out here to some of my friends from Sea Change, for some congregations that have committed to joining us in this work and helping us to defend this law. So welcome to all of you. So glad to see you here. Appreciate your partnership and energy, and some old friends who I haven't seen in quite some time. It's wonderful to see you back on the screen. Can't believe it's been, oh my God, 12 years. But here we are, and we are not backing down from this fight. We're going to protect the citizens of Massachusetts, and we're going to do it together in coalition, just as we always have. And so I appreciate all of you. And Ruth, tell me what I forgot.
I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay.
So congratulations on 12 years of doing this work, Janet. The work continues. I appreciate you sharing all that information. As you can tell, it's been a pretty busy time building all of this infrastructure. And while we have been doing that, we have our staff has also been very busy with some different projects to move the work forward of all of the things, whether it is our organizing work or education, what we're doing at the State House while this other infrastructure building happens and we get ready to take on this ballot initiative. And so I'm excited to introduce all of our staff to you this evening so you can know who they are and hear a little bit more about what they have been up to. And I am going to start with our communications specialist, Caitlin Delahanty. Caitlin?
Hi, everybody. For those who I haven't met yet, my name is Caitlin Delahanty. I'm the communication specialist here at the Coalition. Obviously, at this moment in time, it's more important than ever that we are keeping our Coalition community informed about what's going on here in Massachusetts when it comes to gun violence prevention and how activity at the federal level is impacting us here at home. So in that vein, we are looking to make a couple updates to our communications channels, namely our website. Later this week, we will be meeting with our website developer about a few things. First, we've heard your feedback that the fact sheet and other materials about this new gun safety law need to be more prominently and intuitively placed on our website. So that's a big priority for us. We also are going to be discussing how to better place information about our public education and civic engagement trainings, as well as information and donation links for our new 501c4, Mass Action to Prevent Gun Violence. And finally, we want to remind everyone that we have a calendar feature on our website that we are looking to improve. We want our Coalition community to be able to use this calendar to find out about other member or partner organizations' upcoming events that are relevant to gun violence prevention, as well as any activities that the Coalition is organizing. So if you or your organization have any upcoming events that you would like featured on this calendar, we encourage you to submit them. I'm going to include a link to the submission form in the chat. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out at info@mapreventgunviolence.org. And with that, I'm going to hand over the Zoom mic to my colleagues.
Thank you, Caitlin. And next, I want to introduce our community organizer, Giovanna Rodriguez. Giovanna?
Thank you, Ruth. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to kind of meet you all virtually. So as Ruth said, I'm the community organizer, started a little bit in November, so a couple months in. But one of my main focuses and roles of what it is that I do is be engaged with communities, be engaging with youth. So, and talking about what are the root causes of gun violence and violence as a whole. So, some of the work that I've been doing is just engaging, being in communications, and just really talking to people, talking to our young folks, our youth, to talk about what gun violence is, giving them that space to have those conversations. So that's something that I will continue to do with our curriculum. So if any of y'all are familiar with any programs that might be interested in having these conversations and exploring what the root causes of gun violence are and exploring a little bit more advocacy, you can also follow us and send us an email through the email that Caitlin just added to the chat. Very happy to be here and hope to continue doing the amazing work that we're all doing. Passing it off back to you, Root.
Thank you, Giovanna. And rounding out our staff would be our new policy manager, Alejandra Rivera. Allie?
Yeah, thank you. Like Ruth said, my name is Alejandra, or Allie, whatever you prefer. I am the new policy manager, and I'm really excited to be a part of this work. I'll just give a little overview of what my role will entail and some of the projects that I've been working on, and I'm excited to kick off really soon. So one of the programs that we are starting to roll out is a volunteer program. So this is for anyone in the community or any person who really wants to become more of an advocate for gun violence prevention or engage with us in a much more meaningful way. This is an opportunity for them to get a little bit more training and a little bit more familiar with what the advocacy scene looks like in Massachusetts related to gun violence prevention. So the volunteer program would entail some trainings that will equip our volunteers with the tools necessary for them to feel confident in their knowledge about gun violence prevention, not only its history, but also the drastic change that the law has just reshaped Massachusetts gun laws in general, and then also really help them become more aware of what the omnibus bill is about, and so that they can feel confident in being able to combat any misinformation about gun violence legislation or the omnibus bill out in their communities. We are connecting with university students, healthcare professionals, and others who want to join the coalition in this fight to protect the omnibus bill and become a well-rounded and informed extension of the coalition out in the community, and very much pointed towards the State House as well. Virtual trainings, we hope, will kick off in late March, early April. And if you or someone you know would like to participate, please feel free to fill out the survey that I will add to the chat as soon as I stop talking. I can't really multitask all that well, so this is for your benefit. But I will also just mention that aside from the volunteer program, we also are using the survey to inform more about who these people are and what their interests are. And so far, the results have seemed to be pointed towards advocacy and state house efforts. And we really want to make sure that since the session just started in January, there is a great foundation already set. So Ruth and I are doing some groundwork, meeting with legislators and their staff to discuss the importance of the omnibus bill and preserving it specifically, and hearing from them on how we can best engage with their constituents. So stay tuned for more updates on exactly what that will entail and how it will all come together.
Thank you, Allie. Appreciate all of you sharing some of the work that you have been doing. And I'm also really glad for everyone on the screen to be able to meet our terrific staff. It's been really lovely to have everyone working together. And while you've heard a lot about their individual projects, I also can't say enough about how everyone works together to support each other and what they're doing. And the collaborative effort and the spirit has been really lovely to be a part of. So I think you got to see a little glimpse of that this evening. And now we are going to transition because I believe I saw Senator Creem joining us, although I don't yet see her on my screen. So I want to make sure. There you are. Welcome, Senator Creem. So glad to have you.
Glad to be.
I'm thrilled that you were able to spend some time with us this evening. And I just want to do a quick introduction for you before we get into our content for this evening. And really give you a very warm welcome. I think a lot of folks know that Senator Cream has been a champion and friend to the coalition for many, many years. But in addition to that important work, I want to share a little bit more about her history with all of you. Senator Cream has served in a public capacity for more than 30 years, first as a member and president of the Newton Board of Aldermen, and then as a member of the Governor's Council prior to becoming a state senator in 1999. Among her top priorities since entering the legislature, Senator Cream has been a leading advocate for restoring judicial discretion in sentencing, eliminating across-the-board mandatory minimum sentences, and of course, increasing protections in the Commonwealth around gun violence. And we have been thrilled to partner with her over the years in that incredibly important work. Particularly these last few years, we have all been working very hard to move this comprehensive legislation forward, which we were successful in doing this past summer. So thank you, Senator Cream, for joining us. We really appreciate having you this evening.
Thank you, Ruth. It's really great to work with you. You're a terrific partner. All of the coalition is. I see Janet Goldenberg and other members and friends. We've worked many years on issues, and I can't think of a group I'd rather work with. So thank you for inviting me.
Well, welcome. And just to remind everyone, we have some questions that we're going to go through first. And if you have any questions that you want to ask, please do add them to the chat and we'll get to that in a little while. And I also wanted to mention another important role for Senator Cream is Senate Majority Leader. So she is really a very busy person. And so I just really want to appreciate you taking the time out to be with us. And to start, our first question is, I just want to acknowledge and to talk about the fact that Massachusetts now has the lowest rate of gun deaths of any state in the country. And we have worked hard to make that happen. And I'm wondering, Senator Cream, if you could talk a little bit about how you see this recent legislation that just was passed as a vital part of keeping the residents of the Commonwealth safe from gun violence.
Well, thank you. And we are proud that we have one of the lowest rates of gun violence. But partnership between government and gun violence preventive organizations has allowed us to do that. But we know that in order to maintain our track record, we need to constantly revisit our gun laws and address issues raised by the latest technology and latest patents in gun violence. And that's why we did the law that we passed in the last session, which would address the root causes of gun crime, gun deaths, and gun injuries. And it does not infringe on the rights of legal, responsible gun owners. So we focused on a few things that we felt really represented what concerns we had. Besides working with the advocates, we worked with law enforcement. We worked with the police. We prepared a bill that incorporated the needs not only of the activists, but the law enforcement people who are on the front line. So first off, the regulation regulates so-called ghost guns. Ghost guns, they're unserialized, untraceable weapons that are often purchased over the internet as parts that can readily be assembled into a firearm. I guess you can get anything on the internet. I don't know if you can get it on Amazon, but you can purchase the parts so easily. But ghost guns have been a concern of everyone. I spoke to law enforcement, to Senate colleagues, community-based organizations, and clearly ghost guns was an issue. So ghost guns have increased the crimes, and crimes in Massachusetts and around the country have increased tremendously with the use of ghost guns. The gun safety legislation that we passed gives law enforcement the tools it needs to crack down on those. But it does that by requiring serialization of all firearms frames and receivers, and by including a key Senate provision which would treat unfinished frames and receivers as firearms. Those provisions will allow law enforcement to apprehend people who are selling ghost gun kits that can be assembled into firearms. The Senate also made it illegal to use a 3D printer to manufacture firearms without an appropriate license. So you would need a license to use that 3D printer or to sell a 3D printer that has the primary intended purpose of manufacturing firearms to someone without a license. That will make a huge dent in trying to regulate the issue of ghost guns. The next piece, which we heard a lot of complaints about, was Glock switches. That is an issue that has plagued communities around the Commonwealth. Police chiefs told me that they would typically recover a small handful of shells at the scene of the shooting. So they say 5 bullets were fired in rapid succession. But more recently, police have arrived at the scene and found shell casings all over the ground because the shooters were able to spray dozens of bullets in the matter of seconds. This alarming rise in the number of bullets that can be fired in a short time is caused by the proliferation of devices that convert a semi-automatic firearm into a fully automatic machine gun. These devices are called Glock switches or auto sears, and they have been used in recent years in tragic, high-profile shootings in areas like Boston, Springfield, and elsewhere. And in that spray of shooting, even if there was an intended victim, we saw many instances where somebody was in the vicinity and got sprayed with these guns. Possessing this device is illegal under federal law, and attaching them to a firearm is illegal under Massachusetts, but they're not illegal to possess under our state law. That would significantly hamper efforts by local police to get Glock switches and similar devices off our streets. The new law that we passed criminalizes the possession of a Glock switch or similar device, treating it like the illegal possession of a machine gun. This change will give law enforcement the authority to get those deadly devices out of our communities. You probably read a lot about an ERPO. So this is an extreme risk protection order. The bill that we did, the version of our law, what we had previously was only the police or a family or household member could petition the court to temporarily remove a firearm and license from someone who posed a danger to themselves and others. The new law allows health professionals to file those petitions, but only with regard to patients they've treated within the past 6 months. It allows certain school officials to file those ERPOs. Health professionals have a unique access to their patients' mental states and personal circumstances. School officials have a window into the struggles of their students. They're often in the best position to identify someone who should not have access to guns. The law also allows ERPO petitions to be filed to prevent somebody from obtaining a gun license in the first place. Our laws in many of the states only allow you to use that on someone that already has a license. And this measure expansion of the ERPO law helps Massachusetts residents safe from gun violence. The expansion of ERPO was something that the police came to us and said, the way the law reads now, that doesn't really help us. There are people who are in a better position, know the person better, and that they should be the ones to make the call. So I think that's a really, really excellent addition. The other was something called Section 12S. Police chief said that in order to protect public safety when issuing gun license, they need a better access to records of involuntary mental health hospitalizations. The new law directs police who are involved in these involuntary mental health hospitalizations to enter a record into a state database so that that issue can be considered during the firearm licensing process. A record of hospitalization does not automatically disqualify anyone from obtaining a license. Instead, it enables the authority to inquire about the circumstances of the incident and inform the authority's decision about whether the applicant is suitable. This portion of law also protects individual privacy and affords due process. It makes it clear that records of hospitalization can only be used to carry out background checks for firearm sales and licensing. It ensures applicants can provide a statement from their mental health professional attesting to the suitability. Anyone denied a license due to mental health hospitalization can appeal that decision to the court. So we wanted to be clear and we wanted to go slow. But this new law enables licensing authorities to ensure the safety of the public by getting the best information they can, the most information. The other piece that we did, and I know the activists were very pushing this, and that was the crime gun data. This law improves that data we collect relating to crime guns, helping us develop policy. The data is invaluable. It will be used to help local and state police target investigations. It will help policymakers tailor future laws, and it will help gun violence prevention organizations adapt their strategies to areas of focus. For instance, the law allows EOPS, that's the state public safety, to begin and analyze whether a license holder involved in the purchase or transfer of a gun used in crime also purchased or transferred other guns, and whether any of those guns were used in crimes. This is used as a way to provide information with regard to who might be trafficking firearms or gangs or other criminal organizations. For years, I filed this bill called One Gun a Month. I know that the joke in my family was my husband said, "Who needs more than one gun? How come you never get that passed?" But this is the way to do it. With providing more data, studying, we can really phase into who is trafficking, where are these guns coming from. And there will be an online data board containing a wealth of non-identifying data relating to the incidents of firearm violence, like the source of the firearm, and the model, and the make, and the demographics, and the licensing status of the perpetrator. So I think that's a quick rundown of some of the important things. I have a lot of other things, but these were things that I think mostly we thought we worked with the activists on and we thought would make a huge difference.
Thank you so much, Senator Cream. I think it's really important for us to begin with some appreciation for you, because this law would not have been possible without your leadership and all of the advocacy that you did, the work of your staff as well. So I just want to start with all of us giving you some appreciation for everything that you did to move all of these important policy pieces forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I also felt like it was important as we look ahead to protecting this legislation to start by grounding us again in why this legislation is so important. We talk a lot at the coalition about how there's not one solution to gun violence. And even in this legislation, we see so many different policy pieces covered, also including a look at how we fund violence intervention across the state to make sure that it is equitable, that is well thought out. And it is when you have comprehensive policy responses, in addition to sustained investment in community-based solutions, that's how we really move the needle forward. So we appreciate all of the work that went into updating our laws and making sure that this response was comprehensive. And I want to reflect back on something that you mentioned during your remarks, Senator Cream. You talked about how this law doesn't infringe on anyone's rights to own a gun. And so that leads us to the next question that we had for you, which is, we know that there's an effort to repeal this legislation. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are, what you would say to those who are seeking to repeal this legislation.
Well, you know that there is a ballot question. Enough signatures were obtained that in 2026, and remember that is an off year, not a presidential year, there will be a ballot question to repeal the legislation. And of course, there's a lot of information that's misinformation. And I do, and thank you for bringing that up, my comments. I want to be clear that there will be people working to repeal the law that are ideologically committed to an extreme interpretation of the Second Amendment. that is out of step with the views of the American people, such as you can make no limitations on anyone's use of a gun. And I don't think we can change their mind, and that everything we did is an infringement on their inalienable rights to carry a gun under the Second Amendment. But those aren't laws. The latest cases coming out of the US Supreme Court even the most conservative judges admitted that there are instances where we can make some restrictions on one's right to carry, because if you look at the original interpretation, when the Second Amendment became the Second Amendment, it was, some say, it was just to bear arms in the event that the country needed to defend themselves. But even if you extend that, there were restrictions that were put on the kind of people who were suitable to carry a gun. But there are others who have a more reasonable perspective and may be swayed by misinformation. And those are the people that I hope we can talk to. Those on the fence or leaning to support a repeal. So the purpose of this bill is to address the underlying causes of gun crime, gun deaths, and gun injuries. It is not, let me say again, it is not intended to take away anyone's legal constitutional rights. As we drafted the law, we consulted with law enforcement to tell us what are the weaknesses in our prior laws and how are our legitimate gun laws failing us. That's why the law focused on ghost guns, Glock switches, firearms, making firearms switches that make firearms automatic, on measures to keep firearms away from those that pose a risk. And that's why the law has the support of the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police. That's an important, and the district attorneys, that's important for these gun owners to understand. These are people on the front lines of responding to gun crimes, and they've said, we need to make these changes. So the law did make some modest changes to the state's ban on assault-style weapons. That also, it codified the Attorney General's interpretation of what constitutes an illegal copy or duplicate of an assault weapon. However, the legislature went to great pains to ensure that all legally owned guns were grandfathered. So even if we made changes or suggestions to the list of features for semi-automatic, we made sure that there would be nobody whose gun was legal and then would become illegal. And that there are rumors and misinformation, but these are just common sense changes that we did that respect the Second Amendment. And we did them under the understanding of how we read the Bruin case and the other Supreme Court cases. And so I would urge all of us to say to those gun owners, we hear you. We support legal gun owners. You yourselves, what I said to them is, you yourself would want to weed out those people who don't have a license, who use a gun as not to defend themselves, not for hunting, but as a method of killing. That's where we want to be clear. You are legal and you have a license to sell and you're a suitable person, you're still going to be able to carry a gun. In Massachusetts, you're still going to have a license. And we feel pretty good about that.
Thank you. And I want to also go back to something that you talked about, which is the sort of core value over in this work to save lives and to prevent the trauma of gun violence and to make sure that communities are safe. And you have a group of people on the screen right now who really want to help make that happen and make sure that we protect this legislation. And just a quick reminder for folks who do have questions, please do put them in the chat. We'll have some time after this to get to your questions. But my question to you, Senator Creem, as you're looking at this group of activists and people who are here because they want to make sure that we maintain the progress that we've made here in Massachusetts, what is your message to all of us who are here to protect this legislation?
Well, we need to spend the next 2 years countering this misinformation about the bill, highlighting how it makes us safer and organizing to win the ballot. And I don't think just a mild win. I think we need a resounding victory that make a big statement. Legislators will be watching the results of the referendum, not in this Commonwealth, but in Congress and in 50 states. And we don't want a lopsided victory. We want to make it easier for Congress and other states to pass the kinds of laws that we did. So I'm hoping that we can support the campaign to defend the new law because we lead a large and committed grassroots coalition. And as we get closer to the 2026 election, I'm sure there'll be opportunities for those of you interested to support the ballot campaign with donations and outreach to voters. Now, it's not my role to be looking for funding, but this is going to be a well-funded campaign. This is going to be money that's going to be coming not only from the Massachusetts gun owners, but from the NRA. And we're going to have to find our own way to raise funds to make it clear. Sometimes I've seen other referendums that failed because the message wasn't clear. We need a clear, resounding message that we can take on the news, that we can take on television, that we can bring to people, that this is just a matter of protecting our citizens, legally protecting them. So, and it's just making us safer. And I'm hoping that, we can do that. I mean, the question of who should own a gun and whether you should be able to use a gun if you're underage, and what underage is, all these are questions that doesn't take the right away from the legal gun owners. It just, if you live in a district, which not all my constituents don't, but I heard from members of the Senate that lived in Springfield, in Lawrence, in Boston, the way of life of having people shooting at you, shooting at kids, we made it a crime to shoot at a household. People riding around in a gun, shooting indiscriminately at people's homes. We did a lot more than just those things I mentioned. And, we've got all that information. If there's anything you think that's more likely to make people support than others, we certainly, Ruth, we can pull together whatever we need.
Well, we're looking forward to continuing to partner with you on this important work. And I want to highlight something that you said too, because obviously this legislation is really important to Massachusetts, but it's important for the rest of the country for them to see that we are protecting this legislation, that we are continuing to lead, and so that other states see what we are doing here in Massachusetts and that we are able to continue moving this work forward. And just for a few minutes, I do want to make sure we have time for other questions. But as we talk about continuing to partner with you, I would love for you to just talk for a few minutes about your hopes and dreams for continuing to move this work forward and what's up next.
Well, I thought I could get it in that bill, but it was just a little piece. So I did file something. So my hopes and dreams would be to have a law that made the industry accountable for what's happening. I mean, that sort of happened in the tobacco industry. There has to be some accountability. So in addition to defending this law, we have this opportunity to strengthen our gun laws. And I filed a bill that would expand access to justice for victims of gun violence and incentivize gun manufacturers and dealers to take steps to prevent firearms from falling into the wrong hands. Other states have something like this. And really, many of the victims that recovered in other states recovered because there was some bit of law on the liability of the manufacturer. The gun industry enjoys significant immunity from liability under the Federal Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. But that immunity is not absolute. State legislators have the ability to pierce the industry's liability shield. And we can create a standard of conduct for the firearm industry and establish a liability for industry members who fall short of that standard. 9 states have already passed laws that make it easier to bring lawsuits against irresponsible firearm industry actors. Now, these are not lawful gun owners. These are actors that don't have a standard of conscience in a way. So under this bill, the firearm industry would be expected to establish reasonable controls, meaning that they would have to implement procedures that are designed to prevent guns from falling into the hands of traffickers. They'd have to pay attention. Straw purchasers, prohibited persons, and anyone known to be a risk. They could not indiscriminately sell to people. They would need to pay attention. The industry would be prohibited from selling products that are designed, sold, or marketed to minors, or prohibit persons, or in a manner that encourages their conversion from legal products to illegal products. There's one manufacturer that manufactures a little gun, a pony gun, and makes that gun look so beautiful, makes that gun look so seductive to children. That is not manufacturing, but advertising to young people when we want to keep the guns out of the hands of young people. I don't think that reasonable control. The bottom line is if the gun industry engages in irresponsible practices, that leads to Massachusetts residents being injured, killed, or otherwise harmed. And the victim and our attorney general should be able to seek restitution. That bill that I filed would make that possible. So those are my hopes and dreams, Ruth, but I'll need your help.
Thank you so much, Senator Creem. And I think we all share hopes and dreams that as we are working to protect the gains that we've already made, that we also continue to move new policies forward. There is still more work to be done. And as we say at the coalition, every shooting is both a crisis and a call to action. And our work is to bring the number of shootings in Massachusetts down to 0. And we will continue to work until we make that happen. And we thank you for your partnership in doing that. And I want to give everyone a chance to give you some appreciation, but I'm also seeing some questions in the chat. And I want to remind folks that we do have a few minutes. So if anyone has other questions, please do add them. And the first question is about the role of youth and the ways that young people can be leading in gun violence prevention right now. And so I want to make sure I'm reading the question correctly. Do you feel youth are leading in gun violence right now? And if so, why do you believe that youth are leading? And is there data to show this?
Well, I think it was around the time of Sandy Hook, the youth really got involved. This and climate are 2 areas where I think that youth have become more involved than ever. And some of them called off school and came to the State House. They are afraid to go to school. They don't want to carry a backpack that has because that has monitors. They don't want to be afraid every day they go to school, whether it's college or elementary school. There's that real fear. Look at all of the shootings that have taken place in some form of an educational institution. And I've seen young people be very involved in this area. And look, some communities are having people vote at much younger ages. I think this is an area where young people can make a difference. And I really applaud that.
Thank you for that. And we also know that young people are leading when it comes to addressing other forms of gun violence too, such as gun violence that's happening in the community. And going to the second question that's in the chat, do you believe that education around guns can minimize gun violence and decrease the amount of young people that are impacted by the school to prison pipeline?
Yes, and I think there are organizations like Roker and UTEC and other organizations in the hope of using some Medicaid funds, if we have any Medicaid funds left, to try and set up educational programs. And we've done that in Massachusetts. We have educational programs set up, and safety use of guns is very important, educating young people, but all of that has to be combined with getting illegal guns out of Massachusetts. So we need to do everything together, but certainly education is important.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge something else in the chat, and then there's another question as well. And it's really about the connection between mental health and gun violence. I also want to acknowledge that we have a lot of emotional trauma that young people and all people experience because of gun violence, and the importance of addressing that. That could be a whole quarterly meeting unto itself of how we're really attending to that trauma. So I'm going to hold that for now, and that might be a longer conversation to come back to. And then there's one other question about unfinished firearms and the proportion that would be counted, and that the most popular kits are 20% unfinished, and whether there would be a new threshold of what that means as a part of this legislation is the way I'm understanding the question. I may not be understanding the question correctly.
I'm not sure I totally understand it either. We certainly did with our licensing and registration, we certainly made changes to our gun laws. I'm not sure. I don't see the question. I can look it up in the chat, but I don't myself understand it.
Yeah, maybe we can come back to that and see if we better understand it. There's one more question that I want to ask, and then I want to make sure that we're giving you some appreciation and getting to some announcements. For the industry accountability, would the victim and the gun manufacturer have to be from the same state in order to access that?
Well, we can only regulate in our own state. We can't regulate gun manufacturers outside. We do have a lot of gun manufacturers in Massachusetts, and we can only pass a law that regulates. We can try by saying, you know, there are other states that regulate it, and we can certainly look at that. But this is an attempt to make an accountability for those industries, those companies that are here in Massachusetts. Hopefully this will be something that will happen all over the country. I don't know that at this point, but what we're hoping is there's a lot of gun manufacturers. If we could control the ones in Massachusetts, we'd be doing a lot. You know, many of Aurora and other places, the guns that were used in those crimes were manufactured in Massachusetts. We have really lot of gun manufacturers here. And, you know, I want to go back to the education for a minute, because I did want to say that the law that we passed required firearm safety courses. That might be a little different than the education for young people, but education, even people who have a license. We had people testify that they qualified for a license, but they didn't feel comfortable because nobody even gave them enough of courses that they knew how to use the gun they had. That's how quickly we were dispensing licenses to people. So that's another form of education.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator Creem. As we're running out of time, I want to tie this part up and so we can get to some announcements. But before we get to announcements, can we just give a round of applause to Senator Creem, appreciate her time with us and appreciate all of her work on this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your leadership, your partnership, and your support of us. And we are here to support you in your work as well. So thank you, Senator Creem.
Well, we still have a lot of work to do, so we're going to continue partnering. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have just a few minutes left, and we wanted to leave you with a couple of quick announcements. One is we are very excited to announce that our Peace MVP is fast coming up. It is going to be on Monday, April 7th at Temple Israel in Boston at 7 p.m. And this year we are honoring Matthew Slater, formerly of the Patriots, as our Peace MVP. I know a lot of folks are very excited to meet Matthew and to be a part of this event. We're going to put a link in the chat for folks who want to register for tickets. There's a bunch of information that will be in that link, but we hope that you can all join us for that event. It's going to be really lovely. We're going to have food from NECAT, New England Culinary Arts Training, which is a local organization that trains folks in culinary skills. So we're super excited to have this event coming. And a preview of other things that you can be doing with the coalition in the community. And I'm seeing our friend Pace on the screen from the Peace Institute. We have the Mother's Day Walk for Peace also fast approaching, and the coalition will have a team. Giovanna's been putting together our team page, and you can register to walk with the coalition at the Mother's Day Walk for Peace and support the work of the Peace Institute to transform responses to homicide. It is a very powerful event every year. I think we all really enjoy being a part of it and also walking as a team. So if you're planning on coming, please sign up. We'll provide an Orange Coalition t-shirt for you, and we will make a very orange presence at the walk together. And then another event coming up, we plan to march in this year's Boston Pride for the People, which is coming up in June, and we'll be sending out some more information about that. We'll be walking with the coalition banner. I would also love to have a strong presence there. And then with the events calendar, we'll have many more events for you to be aware of and participate in. And of course, action alerts coming on, more work to protect the legislation and move new legislation forward, and more work in the community. And we look forward to having you all join us for all of those different activities. And thank you so much for being a part of our coalition community, spending time with us this evening. And thank you again to Senator Creem for being with us. I hope you all have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.